Hello, Region Weather Livers. Welcome to spring. But you wouldn't know that in the forecast. Yes, unfortunately, on the first full day of spring here on Tuesday, we are looking at snow moving in to the western parts of the Dakotas and moving through North Dakota, northern Minnesota, and northern parts of South Dakota. And as we go through the morning and get to about that noon time frame on Tuesday morning, that snow now beginning to make it more so into central parts of the Dakotas. And we got a little bit heavier band that wants to develop and move to the northeast. And that band we're going to have to kind of watch as we go through the afternoon and evening hours. That band continuing on to the northeast could have some moderate snow, maybe even heavy at times as we get closer to the evening time frame. But the other end of it will be this potential, at least, for some freezing rain or sleet on the very southern edge of this, carrying off into the northeast. So the potential for light to maybe moderate snow and the freezing rain and or sleet. And that continues to move to the northeast. And by 6 p.m. or so on Tuesday evening, that freezing rain or sleet kind of moves into that Watertown-ish area, Sisseton close to. But we also have that more moderate to heavy band of snow moving through Aberdeen and into the James River Valley region and into the southern portions of the Red River Valley by this point, where we could be seeing snow accumulations of up to an inch, perhaps even 2 inches an hour at most. So for those of you kind of within this region between, I'd say 4 p.m. and about 9 or 10 p.m., we're looking at that moderate to heavy snow moving through where, again, maybe that snow could be dropping at an inch per hour a rate. Now, thankfully, the winds won't be gusting too hard, but just the amount of snowfall falling at that point obviously is going to be enough to reduce visibilities and making those roadways a mess. Now here, by the time we get to about 10 p.m., we could see that freezing rain kind of makes it into central parts of Minnesota. We've got more of that moderate to heavy band, like I said, kind of moving through the Fargo to Detroit Lakes area, just kind of clipping maybe Fergus Falls and Alexandria. And as we go deeper into the night, that freezing rain area kind of disappears and we kind of transition more into that just rain and snow line. Little less of that freezing rain in between, not as much as we get to midnight, but we will continue to have a little more light to moderate snow across central parts of Minnesota and cruising into the east by this point as well. And as I'm also going to show you, we're going to have some gustier east winds as this snowfall moves across northern parts of Minnesota as well. So we're going to have the snow that's going to be moderate at times and the winds moving across northern Minnesota through the overnight hours. And so, of course, you're going to be expecting those roadways to become snow covered and messy through the overnight hours. Now moving this right along as we get to about 3 a.m. Again, that snow pretty much remains now across northern parts of Minnesota. We've got maybe some light to moderate in across the far north. And then we're starting to also see by this point those lake effect winds taking place. And so some of you areas along the North Shore could receive a fair amount of snowfall just because of those easterly winds coming off the lake. Moving this a little deeper into the morning here, we are by about 6, 7 a.m. And now you can see most of the area is out of that snow. We've got the light snow across the north mainly, probably still picking up a little bit of moderate snow across the North Shore. Moving this along and getting to about noon on Wednesday, that snow, that area of low pressure and that snow and all that moisture now pretty much out of Minnesota. So that storm system quickly moves out. But unfortunately, on its heels comes this next one that's going to move across mainly the southern portions of South Dakota and southern Minnesota. And I'll show you that a little bit more here in a bit. And so here's what the forecast is looking like for Tuesday in through Tuesday night and early Wednesday morning. That main line of snow, basically, like I said, from Fargo, Wahpeton, Gwinner area up through Bemidji, Detroit Lakes-ish maybe, including that Red Lake and International Falls area where we're looking at that 5 to 7, maybe 5 to 8 inches within there as well. It's possible some of this could be dragged a little bit further back to include that maybe Valley City, perhaps Jamestown area as well. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Models did paint just a little bit of a sliver somewhere in between, but it's possible this whole thing could be stretched just a little bit further back to the west. And also just note, some of the models are kind of hinting that this higher rate, this higher accumulation could shift just a little bit further north. So do keep that in mind for those of you just north of that main line of snow, that heavier band of snow. Perhaps this could shift a little north, but right now this is kind of where we're putting this. Of course, along the North Shore, right along the North Shore, we're calling it 7 to 9, maybe 7 to 10 inches up along there throughout this time frame. And then otherwise, we got this 3 to 5 kind of stretching back, and then across central parts of Minnesota, the 1 to 3 here. And you notice the sharp cutoff that starts to occur that between this 1 to 3, 3 to 5, and even this trace to 1. So you generally, as most of you know, when you do have that sharp cutoff, leaves a bit of uncertainty. And so that's kind of why I've got this highlighted area, this circled area right in through the central parts of Minnesota, just because if this thing waffles at all, just a little bit north or south, it's going to make a big difference, obviously, to those of you within this circle as to how much snow you're going to get. Some of you might not see any if it waffles to the north where you're expecting some. Obviously, if it waffles a little bit to the south, you're going to be expecting a little more, maybe more to that 3 to 5, maybe closer to that 5-inch range of some of that creeps just a little bit further south. So with that in mind, there does look to be a fairly sharp cutoff in through here. So as you're traveling maybe down from Fargo down to the Twin Cities, once you get past Alexandria, things should get better as long as the forecast holds. So I'm going to kind of draw in that main band of snow, that heavier band of snow that moves across southeast North Dakota and across north central Minnesota. And then also, of course, keep your eye on across the North Shore. And then that sharp cutoff that just kind of sits across central portions of Minnesota where that snow line is going to kind of be. And so as I put this wind gust into motion through the morning hours on Tuesday, here we are into the afternoon, closer to about 4 or 5 p.m., that's kind of when those wind gusts start to pick up a little more across portions of Minnesota. Now, by this point, by 9 p.m., you can see where a good chunk of that starts to occur. So for those of you kind of sitting within this region here, by 9 p.m., you're going to be seeing for sure some drifting snow. Now, a lot of you within that area basically sitting in some wooded areas, so maybe that'll help reduce the blowing snow a little bit, but nevertheless, you're probably going to see some drifting snow with wind gusts of 30, maybe 35 miles per hour. And as we continue on to midnight, you can see that back edge of the wind gust start to diminish a little bit more on the west, but continue up in the northeast. Then once we get to about 3 a.m. and then finally by 6 a.m., all we're left with by this point is some of these gustier winds kind of switching more out of the northwest across central portions of Minnesota. And as you can see, most of that kind of just falls south of that main snow line. So that back end of that, those wind gusts, more of those northwesterly winds shouldn't be as much of a problem. I think maybe the bigger problem is going to be through the overnight hours and the very early parts of Wednesday morning, just because of those easterly winds that kind of move on through. And so kind of completing this throughout the remainder of Wednesday morning, we can see those wind gusts do slack off pretty quickly. We get rid of those 20 to 25 mile per hour wind gusts by noon. And then that's pretty much it as we go into the remainder of the day on Wednesday. And with this storm system that moves through Tuesday into Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, there is a winter storm watch here for eastern parts of North Dakota, northern portions of Minnesota, a winter storm warning along the North Shore, and a winter weather advisory just to the southwest of that winter storm watch. Now, like I said, not really much due to the wind, but just due to the amount of snowfall that's going to occur within a relatively short period of time. And now Wednesday right around noon, here comes round 2. This one's going to affect more the southern portions of our viewing area. So this is, like I said, around noon, and by the time we get to about 3 and 6 p.m., snow just kind of starting to stretch into southern portions of Minnesota by this point. And we continue on by 9 p.m. and midnight. So midnight Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. Perhaps we'll have a little bit more of the light to maybe some moderate snowfall across southeastern portions of South Dakota, southwest Minnesota by this point. So the overnight hours, once again, getting kind of messy for some of you. Now, it does look like most of that freezing rain and sleet will stay just south of our areas as it's looking right now. Maybe a little bit creeps up across the far southeastern portions of Minnesota late into the night, early Thursday morning. But generally speaking, I think we're mainly looking at light to moderate snow, maybe a little bit of heavier stuff, like I said, closer to that midnight time frame. But by this point, once we're at 3 a.m. on Thursday morning and here 6 a.m. Thursday morning, we're just left with this streak, this line, this area of light snow across southern portions of South Dakota and Minnesota. And this does quickly move off. Here we are by 9 a.m. and by noon time frame, that high pressure begins to settle in, clearing things out in this next little area that troubles the southern parts have moved off by noon on Thursday. And it's a little early, but just to kind of give you at least a rough idea of what to expect out of this second storm system, that light to moderate might be bringing 4 to 6 inches somewhere across southeast, South Dakota, southwest Minnesota. So just look for a little heavier band somewhere within this region down here. And then it looks like at the start here, as we start Wednesday morning, the western parts of South Dakota could also see that 4 to 6 inch mark. But generally speaking, most areas across the south will see 1 to 4 inches. It just kind of depends where exactly you're at. But this isn't going to be a huge snowmaker, except for, like I said, maybe just a couple of areas. Now, thankfully, when we talk about wind gusts, same as the first one, this other one coming in Wednesday and into Thursday, not a whole lot of wind gusts associated with this either. So the main problem is just going to be the falling snow. The winds shouldn't be as much of a problem, so not expecting roadways and interstates to close with this. And then beyond that, really not much trouble coming. Maybe a little bit as we get into Saturday and Sunday, but as you can see there, not a whole lot of heavy snow associated with it. Maybe just some light nuisancey type of snow coming through the weekend, but boy, other than that, for now at least, it looks like we have a quiet few days beyond Thursday. And I didn't do a video for Sunday, but normally on Sundays I like to take a look at the high temperatures throughout the week. So we'll do it here for today. And you can see on Tuesday for your highs, you're looking at the 20s across the north, where we're looking at 40s across the southern portions of our area. Wednesdays, those highs dip down for some of you here across portions of Minnesota, as on the backside of that first system brings in some northwesterly winds and kind of pulls down this colder air. So that's where you're looking at everybody here. You're looking below freezing here. Most of you are in the mid to upper 20s. Elsewhere across eastern Minnesota, we're looking at mid to upper 30s to possibly mid to upper 40s down in the south. And then the mid-30s down in the southwestern parts of South Dakota. Thursday, probably still some lingering effects from that passing of the first storm, where we got the below freezing temperatures up across the north and west, mid-20s to upper 20s. Elsewhere, we're looking at mid-30s to around 40. Friday, things get a little better for some of you. Unfortunately, sorry, North Dakota, once again, you're stuck below freezing, where we're looking at mid-20s to around 30 at least. Otherwise, you're looking at around 40 to maybe mid-40s to possibly even near 50. Yes, for those of you down by Sioux Falls, more so Sioux City and Yankton, you might get near 50 on Friday. Saturday, things cool off just a bit once again. And for Sunday, again, we're just left with that nose down in through here, where we're looking below freezing, unfortunately. A little bit warmer in the east and down in the southwest. So I guess compared to some of the other storms that have rolled through our area lately, these next two coming for Tuesday and then again on Wednesday and into Thursday aren't so bad. We're just dealing with snow. We're not dealing as much, at least, with some of those winds that shut down roadways. We're probably just going to be dealing with the nuisancey snow-covered roads that are still going to make things slippery. But I guess I don't expect at this point that we'll see interstate shut down with these couple of systems. So that's the good thing. And then beyond that, we're actually not looking too bad for a while. With that said, this will be the only video I do this week. So do use caution. Keep updated with the weather service and your local TV stations as well for any types of changes. But unfortunately, this is the only one I'm doing. I'll be gone for the remainder of the week, and I'll touch base with you by Sunday. So for Region Weather Live, I'm meteorologist Brad Warner. Everybody, have a good week.